Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
Located on Lake Pontchartrain, Brisbee's Lakefront Restaurant and Bar offers traditional West End favorites, a scenic view, oysters, and numerous tasty options. More information is available at 504-304-4125 or brisbeesrestaurant.com. At Natal's Air Conditioning, our motto is service honoring the golden rule. We're dedicated to providing the best air conditioning solution for your home or business in the New Orleans metro area. More information is available at 504-821-0005. Natal's Air Conditioning, a proud sponsor of the St. Jude Dream Home. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters, as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile.
Good evening, New Orleans, and welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Over the next hour, we're going to talk a lot about what's happening with the New Orleans Saints, the LSU Tigers, the Tulane Green Wave, and the New Orleans Pelicans. I'm your host, Eric Asher, and we got a great panel for you tonight. Gus Kattengell of 106.1 The Ticket and Lyons Yellin of WWLTV.com. And guys, thanks so much for coming down. Certainly appreciate you guys being on the panel tonight. Gus is a returning guest. Gus, let's let the folks know a little bit about what's going on in your life.
A lot. Just obviously just sports, just like him. I remember seeing Lyons at training camp, and it's crazy. We're covering the same things, but it's almost like, hey, how you doing? Nice to see you. Because it's normally you're running from one thing to another, but obviously 3 to 6 every single weekday, and of course following on Twitter at GCat_17. And this is just the best time of the year, isn't it? I mean, it's October. The NBA's just started. The NFL season's really getting to its meat and potatoes. College football playoff finally releases its poll. That's happening. So there's a lot to talk about for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. Of course, also sideline reporter for the Tulane Green Wave.
That's right. I completely forgot. We got a game this week. Exactly.
I got you. Lyons, welcome back home.
Thank you.
If you would, tell the folks a little bit about you. Of course, you went to Newman, went to the University of Alabama, and now back home writing for WWLTV.com, contributing to all the newscasts. Tell everybody a little bit about it.
I did. I was at the Times-Picayune for a couple of years, went over to the Tuscaloosa News as a digital editor for about 10 months, came back on WWL-TV, WWLTV.com right now. Of course, covering the Saints full-time. Spend most of my life at the training facility these days after we spent a month at training camp. So, yeah, it's a fun time to be in New Orleans sports right now with everything going on. Pelicans basketball coming back. I look forward to covering a little bit of that after the season's over.
Well, welcome back home.
Thank you.
Glad to have you doing a great job over there.
Appreciate it.
Guys, Saints 3-4, get a big win over Green Bay. Quick turnaround now for the Saints. They have to take on the Carolina Panthers, but let's face it, we'll take you first, Gus. Best overall game of the season, in my opinion. Right. The big question is now, even with this short week, have they righted the ship?
I don't think anyone's going to know and find out until we get to Carolina. And I'm sure, Lyons, you're probably happy because we were being questioned, Eric, whether or not we even went to practice. I mean, we kayaked, we had fun. It was beautiful in the Greenbrier.
Nice.
Exactly. But people wonder if we went to practice because we had told everybody, hey, this was one of the deepest defenses you had seen. This offense with Brandon Cooks, unstoppable, the running game. We've been telling you they're going to run it, they're going to happen. And then the season starts happening. Atlanta comes, Eric, and you see the offense start going, but the defense isn't kind of the same. Maybe it's the first game, they kind of know, but then you have the collapses at Cleveland, the Dallas game, and the wins between Minnesota and Tampa, and you start going, what? I don't know. I don't know where that team was. Sunday night, that was the team that we were seeing in West Virginia. So I'd like to think it can carry over. I mean, the components are there, and I think even Lyons would agree with this. It's never been about what the talent is on the field. It's for some reason, it's something internal. It could be the intangibles. It can be leadership. I have my theory on that as to what it is. But I think that's what it boils down to, Eric. So if they can just perform how they're supposed to, there's no reason why this team can't go on a run. You know, you got a bunch of home games coming up.
Yeah, you do. I'm interested to hear that theory.
Yeah, simple. I think when you take a look at 2009, right, it's the most successful season of the Saints. Obviously, they won the Super Bowl. Well, before that, 2006, you go to Millsaps, and you get a collective group of players that were pretty much castaways.
Yes.
You know, Scott Shanley, Scott Fajita, that openly will tell you, hey, no one else wanted us here. Drew Brees, your shoulders broke. We don't want you. Lance Moore, NFL year, Marcus Colston, a 7th rounder. So you have all those group kind of come up together. So you have a taste of success quickly, right? And it's mainly based off of, I think, a dual feeding. City needed something positive.
Sure.
They fed kind of off of it as well. I mean, it was a 10-win season, but you don't think about it like that, right? It was magical. You went to the NFC Championship game. So you have a taste of success. But there's still a lot of holes in that team. So 07-08, you have 8-8 seasons. And you start out with a 4-game losing streak in 2007, my first on the sidelines, and you saw it. You know, how do you deal with that? Adversity. Okay, we need some other pieces, so you bring it in. But the core group of players were together, 06, 07, 08. So then you have the T-shirts that we all bought in 2009. Finish strong.
Right.
They had that motto. So they realized and put a finger on the one thing that was missing for them to be successful. Then they go and win the Super Bowl. So you look at this team. I mean, Lyons, half of the kids, Brandon Cooks, he was in high school watching Drew Brees be successful. Kenny Vaccaro was in high school watching Drew Brees, or a freshman or sophomore at Texas watching him win the Super Bowl. So they've come into a winning organization, and I think it's going to take time to find leaders like Will Smith, Jonathan Vilman, Roman Harper, guys that were in 6-8 years. A lot of that young, good talent. Lyons, they're young.
You know, all week long they've been saying that same thing. They just assumed that some of those younger players had been around and experienced and knew how to finish, but really, and the reality is that they hadn't. And that there's so many guys that have been brought onto this team in recent years that they don't know how to win. They don't know how to close out games when they're facing adverse situations. And that's why over the last couple weeks, they've really kind of had to look at themselves internally and say, all right, we have to teach these guys how to finish. We have to stand, if it means standing on the sideline at the end of games and going over these situations and saying, all right, this is what's happening right now. Right. This is what we have to do. Now let's go execute it. And really, you saw that come to fruition last week against Green Bay. You saw them on the sideline as they fumbled at the very end, walking up and down saying, all right, look, we're okay now. Let's go out and do this or that. And it worked, and they were able to finish strong. So I think going forward, that's going to continue to be a focus, and they're going to have to continue to just kind of pull those young guys along as the season progresses.
Yeah. You know, guys, I've mentioned this many times on this show and my radio show. 7 players remain on the offensive side of the ball from the 09 championship season. None on defense, none. And a lot of people have looked at that as maybe the reason why this defense has struggled early, the lack of leadership, the lack of having those guys that have been in this system, understand the system, have conveyed it from one to the other, have grown up in the system, and now a lot of guys are having to learn kind of on the job here on how to be a leader. But Lyons, I'd like to ask you, do you think that they've righted the ship after this, almost winning in Detroit, not finishing, probably played their best game up until the Green Bay game. Now Green Bay, obviously national TV at home, they're playing really well. They look like they've righted the ship, but have they?
I think they might think they have, but I think they have to prove it. Right. You know what? We can all sit here and say they have their swagger back and that this team's prepared to go on a run, but until they win on the road, they're not going to believe really, truly in their hearts that the ship is righted. And it's kind of ironic that really all their road woes started as far as finishing last year at Carolina when Cam Newton let them down in 32 seconds. I mean, they had lost 2 games before that to the Rams and to Seattle on the road by larger margins, but that's really when they started to have the problems with finishing that carried over into this year. Like we talked about Atlanta, 3 points, 2 points in Cleveland, and then the 1-point loss in Detroit. So I think if they can go into Carolina this week and really prove to everybody, it's a nationally televised audience, the rest of the league, that, hey, we've got this thing figured out now. We can win on the road. We can finish what we started. I think that could really, coming home for 3 games, lead to some good things.
And Eric, I'll add, I think it's super important for them to prove it to themselves more than anything else. You talked about that youth and leadership, the guys in there on defense from the championship season. Look, it's a thing. It's a very real thing. And I know, look, Sean did everything he can, and he has this year. I mean, he'll tell you from things that go on in the locker room to motivational tactics he's tried to use. And I think he's been baffled sometimes as to why it doesn't happen. But again, you can't, whether we're talking to LSU or even Tulane, youthfulness, you can't simulate snaps. You can't practice it. You can't teach it. You can't coach it. You have to go through snaps under duress. You have to go under pressure situations. You have to handle expectations. Cam Jordan, 12.5 sacks. You're the guy. Hey, guess what? Entire offseason, teams now say, we got to take that guy out.
Yes.
So now it's the adjustment phases and periods. And I think that's kind of what you're seeing. But, you know, to use that ship analogy, I think they got the compass. You know, they found it. For a while, they had the Jack Sparrow one where it spun around and everything. I think they have it. But now it's a matter of, let's go into battle, and I think it's, the old, ship war stories where here comes the ship, load the cannons, let's see if you can fight it, because I think they have the confidence, but now it's let's go out there and prove it.
Well, you talked about that motivational ploy, Sean Payton. He's had some good ones over the years. The Reggie Bud, the bring the wood, the bat.
Yes.
Before the Arizona game, that was great in 2009. But I think he really, hit a nerve with this team this week with the one last week, what he put in the lockers of the cartoon of the man digging for the treasure and was so close to reaching it, but he quit before he got to the end. And I really think that struck a nerve with this team, and it's still hanging in their lockers this week. And they pointed to it still like this doesn't just apply to this last game at Green Bay.
Right.
This applies for the rest of the season. We have to finish. We're close to the treasure, which is the playoffs and the Super Bowl, not just this one game.
Yeah.
I agree with both you guys, and I think that obviously this is a huge game because it's a division game. The ability to maybe get over that proverbial hump, you have a chance to be able to get into first place. But I think for the psyche of the team, with so much pressure on them to win a road game, this is a huge game for them to be able to prove that they truly have turned the corner. And it'll be interesting to see, again, how they handle adversity, because I think that's one of the problems they've had on this team. Things happen, and they're going to go wrong in a game. In the past, you knew this team was going to just buck up. Somebody was going to make a play, whether it's offensive, defensively, to turn it around, and they never felt like they were out of a game. I can tell you right now, the first quarter of the season, this version, you were kind of like, well, I don't know if this team can overcome adversity if they can ever get back in a game.
Right.
This is going to be a big game to be able to prove that again, they can overcome adversity, and also that they have really kind of turned the corner, and they have a chance to be able to, be the team that everybody thought they were on paper going into this season.
And I think more than anything else, guys, the mental aspect of this game is more intriguing to me than anything else. Both teams are nicked up. Both teams have to deal with a short week. You've talked to players. I've talked to players. You've talked to players as well. Fact is, as they're traveling and flying on Wednesday night, that's normally the first day of practice, and they're healthy and not as sore anymore, and they're still bumped up. Some players probably would be limited at practice, if not didn't practice. So they're being asked now to fly and then get ready for a game. So both teams are going to deal physically. It's the mental aspect of it. I can tell you from being on that sideline, from covering it, and you can as well, Carolina has the bully mentality. They do not fear the Saints, and they think the best way to go up against that team is to be the physical, dominant. I mean, they're going to talk smack after a 1-yard gain, and don't think they're not going to use a little bit of that emotional edge. Even though he talked to us this week, Roman Harper said all the right things, missed the city, it's business. Don't think that, because at this point, it's a short week. You pull from anything as an athlete, right? So, hey, we're going to win one for you. Hey, that's wrong what they did to you. That's fine. We're going to show that you're in a better place. I'm just saying those little things happen, so it's the mental fortitude of these two teams.
It's the toughest thing about the quick turnaround on a Thursday night game, and you see it all the time. First of all, guys with the propensity to get injured, because you don't have the time to recover, but also get into a physical battle, you kind of see who is the man out there and who's not. Because it's tough to be able to go in and make those tough tackles on a physical running back like a Mark Ingram, or dealing with the physicality of maybe a strong offensive defensive line. You can see some guys kind of whimper in a game like this because you're in a situation where you got a quick turnaround. Both teams played against pretty physical teams. If anything, the schedule maker didn't do the Saints a lot of favors this season, but allowing Carolina to take Seattle on last week, that definitely helped. Lyons, what's your take?
Well, I think both teams are going to be tested physically. They're both hurting, they're both sore, but it's really going to be the mental test, like you're talking about. Carolina, they had the feeling that the Saints had 2 weeks ago. I mean, they let Seattle come back at the very end. So there's going to be some ebb and flows to this game, and really the way the team responds to those is really going to decide the outcome of this game. And I think, I'd like to see the Saints play defense first in this game and really put them out there and say, hey, we might have struggled this season. We've been a bend, don't break defense, but over the last couple weeks, you've started to see them really lock things down in the red zone and really start to force turnovers. So I think that would do wonders for their confidence to be able to take the field first and have a good series against Carolina.
Lyons, as he's saying that, Eric, I mean, my eyes are closing, and I'm picturing the Drew Brees interception when he was in the end zone.
You're reading my mind.
Yeah, the early turnovers at Carolina in the past have absolutely killed this team.
Yep.
So you're right. That's a way to kind of do that.
Well, also, and Gus, I'll piggyback on what you're saying because it's part of one of the questions that I had tonight. Drew Brees, you want to go back a couple seasons now. We've talked about it a lot on this program, talked about it a lot on my radio show. I'm sure you've talked about it on your show as well. He's committing turnovers. He's the leader of this team. A lot of those turnovers under duress, trying to make a play. This team cannot afford, it's not the same team we've seen in the past, the ability to overcome adversity. They cannot afford Brees to turn the football over. He's got to be in that mindset going forward from this point forward that, any error I make could be a critical error, could be a game-changing error for this team. And I think that's one of the things that he's really got to really concentrate on going forward, especially against a division foe like Carolina. Both these teams know each other. You're not going to fool each other.
Yeah, no question. And I think Sunday against Green Bay was the day that you actually saw the Drew Brees we're used to seeing. And I get it. He has set the barometer. You were covering a guy in Tom Brady. I mean, the barometer from those two quarterbacks, I get it. And look, sometimes certain players make plays. The Detroit Lions one, I can almost live with that. That guy was playing the rubber. It was a great coverage call. You saw, he was playing for that. They guessed they were trying to go over the middle. That's where they dropped that safety, got the interception. It's the ones where he's looking straight up into the ceiling and he throws. That's the stuff you see in preseason by the third string.
Right. Yeah, some of those were inexcusable.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Look, it's funny. 7 of his interceptions this year, 6 of those have directly led to points for the other team. 2 of those were returned for pick sixes.
Right.
So when you think about how close those games have been, and the Saints' mantra has been like, "Oh, we're one play away."
Yeah.
It's the honest to God truth. You hear that from a lot of teams sometimes, but really with the Saints this year, they really have been that close. If Brees doesn't throw those interceptions, they win those games.
It's a different season. No, it is. And guys, we talked about a little bit of maturity. I do question a little bit of maturity of this team as well. In the past, the team was in a vacuum. They didn't care what was going on, the noise outside of the locker room. I've heard through listening to you to interviews, reading interviews, guys that are making comments about what's going on with the media, what's going on with the fan base. You've never seen rabbit ears out of this team before. And all of a sudden now, even Brees and Vaccaro, some of these guys that are talking about jumping on bandwagons. Come on, man. You got 16 shots. You got to make the best of every one. And don't worry about what the media is saying. Don't worry about what the fan base is saying. It's your job to win games.
Yeah, no question about it. And look, as long as you've covered and me as well, compared to other markets, the Saints get it very good here in terms of the way the media covers them and stuff. And I find it interesting, and I think sarcasm sometimes, and you have to have humor. It's sports. This isn't politics. That's a whole different show. Yeah. Good luck with that. My thing is have a little fun with it. And look, it's not like we're out here trying to be the New York media, go after Mark Sanchez here, and you're a bum and all that. We're just criticizing what we're seeing.
Just calling what you're seeing.
Yeah,
That's it.
Dude, you're just throwing bad interceptions.
Right.
We're not saying you're terrible, but if you're going to accept the Breezes sort of stuff and the love there, and I hear you, it's just, and that's the whole thing that's interesting. Jimmy Graham in the locker room after the game said that, Breeze didn't care about the criticism, but he was extra tough on him last week, and that it motivated them because they didn't want to let Drew down and all that, but Eric, social media is different in 2009.
No doubt.
Twitter's different in 2009.
All
you
these guys are on Twitter.
That's the big difference there.
And if he doesn't, their wives and girlfriends and brothers and sisters and moms and dads are.
A few years ago, you look back 2, 3, 4 years ago, Twitter wasn't what it was today.
Right.
I mean, it's exploded exponentially over the years. And now you see these younger guys coming along. They are actually, I will be in the locker room sometimes, and they will be following Twitter as we're tweeting
on the phone
what's going on there. And
they engage, how to answer you, which is something that's very odd for me. I've never, because before you walk up to a locker, it's like, oh, so this is a nice one. They'll show you a tweet that you did during the game or something. Like, dude, relax. All I'm saying is you should have made the catch and hit your hands. I don't know what you want me to tell you.
That would have never happened in the past. And you would have never seen some of these veterans. Zach Strief told me the other day, he said, you know what, I have a Twitter account, but I really just have it for my foundation work, and I'll tweet something every blue moon. And that's you really see the dichotomy there between the younger and older players.
Look, we're in a business that we're scrutinized every single day. Those guys are scrutinized. It is what it is. You got to let it roll off your back. You got to go out there and play the next play. Can't worry about what everybody's saying. You got to have to get the job done.
But that's with maturity, though. It's exactly what you're
it is.
saying.
And look, this is a team, and I think a lot of us thought, a few of these guys, the young guys that were ready to come and take over, the Gallettes, the Cam Jordans, these guys were ready for leadership roles. Yeah. Obviously up to this point, they still are working on that. There's no doubt about it. And that's the interesting dichotomy of all of this that I've seen lately is, again, listening to what the outside, because that's something that Peyton's always talked about. Don't buy into the noise. Don't eat the cheese when things are going real well. Don't listen to the noise when things are not going well. And obviously these guys are in tune to what's happening with the media and the fan base. Guys, the Saints have discovered a running game. Mark Ingram last week finally got the rock and was able to do what a lot of us thought he would be able to do if he got a lot of carries. Was it 24 carries, 172 yards for Ingram? I'll take you first, Lyons. When you look at this running game, I think the running game is going to protect Drew Brees. It's going to protect the defense. It opened up the long passing game, the deep passing game last week against Green Bay. All of a sudden, that safety's got to come in, and they got to at least expect the Saints are going to run the football. And again, that allowed them to go over the top. You covered Mark Ingram at Alabama. Talk a little bit about his running style and how he's grown as a running back.
What I've seen, and we talked about this a lot at training camp, he's really become a patient runner this year. And he's not just running into the backs, going where the play is designed. If he doesn't see a hole, he just runs into the back of the offensive lineman. No, he's being patient. He's biding his time, and then he's finding the hole. And it might be the secondary hole. It might be a third option. It might not even be the way the play is designed. But he's hitting the hole hard like he did at Alabama, and he's really showing that the more he touches the ball, the stronger he gets as the game goes on. And really, I did a bunch of research today on Mark Ingram, and I found this stat to be unbelievable. Over his career, he's played in 41 games. The Saints have 10 times given him the ball more than 14 carries. They're 9-1 in those games.
Wow.
So, I think the offensive line felt comfortable, and a number of guys said this to me. Jimmy Graham, I didn't even have to ask him this. He offered this up. He said, look, when we have one guy carrying the ball like this, it makes it much easier on us because we get into a rhythm with what he's doing, and it makes our blocks much easier. So I'd love to see them continue giving him the ball like this, and I kind of joked last week that, if it means that Kerry Robinson and Pierre Thomas have to take their time getting back, get well, guys. Let's keep feeding Mark Ingram the ball.
Well, I'm with you, and I'm only laughing because, Eric, I've been asking for this for a while, and it's interesting because Drew Brees after the game was asked a question by someone somewhere around that lines about just having that play calling single back and the tempo and everything, and he immediately dismissed it. He's like, doesn't matter what the tempo is. It didn't have to do with the single back, which I thought he was very edgy after the game. Normally an answer by Drew Brees is 2.5 minutes per answer. He spoke for 4 minutes overall. It was like 4.5 minutes after the game. Question, the answers were 20 seconds. I'm telling you, it was his, so y'all think I stink still. I got that vibe off of him, but that's fine. No. That's fine. If that's what it takes,
the criticism.
Exactly. If that's what it takes for you to go out there and play well, that's fine. I'll take credit. But Lyons, I find that interesting because this team's always been able to do it. I think they've been able to run the football. Last year, they tried to establish it, and the players wanted it. You've heard Pierre Thomas call for it. Kyrie Robinson says, give me the ball. There's a guy in New York that fans loved with the dreads and running everywhere else, and Chris Ivory, that begged for the football. And until he heard the criticism, Sean Payton, against the Falcons in the game in the Superdome that activated him, they didn't run him. It's Sean Payton. And I think
Right.
that's the thing that's going, you talk about the maturity and the adaptation of what's worked for you. The thing that I find fascinating to me is at the end of every year, we'll always go into it and go, hey, just like they do, and they sit down in their rooms and go, what worked, what didn't, what do we need to do for next year? You have to look at it and whether we played fantastic. Father Time adds another year in Drew Brees. Okay, fine, we got to protect him, right? On the road, we're having trouble with communication. We're trying to pass it. I mean, you've seen the game plans at Seattle in that Monday night game. You can't hear yourself think, let's spread everybody out and try to throw the ball 7 of the first 10 times. It's just not smart. So run the football, believe and trust in it. You're starting to see that this year at times that he is. But it's almost like he still wants to be Sean. You know, it's like, and that's what I'm afraid of going in this Carolina game. Be smart with it. They're 28th against the league in running. You go out there and start passing 9 in the first 10. All it takes is, it might not even be Brees' fault. Right. It's a tip. It's something. It's the wind, and it's a pick, and now it's a different ballgame.
And look, last week, Green Bay was 31st against the run.
Right.
This week, Carolina is 31st in average yard per carry allowed.
There you go.
You know what? Mark Ingram is #1 among running backs in average yards per carry. He's averaging, I think, 6.2 yards per carry this season. And look, you have to feed him the ball. You have to get him going. He has to develop into a rhythm. And what that does is keep your defense off the field. That's been the biggest.
That's another
that's
thing,
been
right.
the biggest problem this season is the defense has been forced to be on the field for so long, giving up these 10, 12, 14 play drives that last anywhere from 5 to 7 minutes, and then the offense comes on the field. You have a couple quick incompletions. The clock doesn't run at all, and then the defense is forced to come back out there again. And so the running game protects the defense, and then it all is cyclical. It works together and really helps the offense.
And the line, which again had been known in the past as a great pass blocking line, has proven that they are physical enough to open up holes for the running game. They've been doing it all season long. You go back to the last quarter of last season, they were doing it. And again, I think, you know, Brees getting up in age, protect him. You looked at him last week, as I mentioned, the ability to get the deep ball. Not under duress a lot last week. Why? Because there was at least a threat of running the football. And let's face it, Ingram did a great job with it. Guys, tonight, Saints take on Carolina. Gus, your thoughts? What happens with the Saints?
I actually think the Saints find a way to pull this one out. I still think it can be close, and I also wouldn't be surprised if they wind up blowing Carolina out, but I don't. I mean, these games are always close and they're tight. That edge, that edginess, the way it kind of feels, and quite honestly, it's almost like in baseball in the World Series, even in basketball, when you have a couple of different rounds in playoffs, the fact that it's a short week might benefit the Saints. It might aggravate, and it might be worse for Carolina. Home loss, Seattle had a chance. Oh, here comes a hot team. For the Saints, it was, see, this is how we can play. There's no time to think of, can we take this on the road? Lions had to immediately get into work. You had to go to film. You had practice. Now you're on the plane. You're waking up. It's game time. Maybe some of that Sunday can still carry over because you haven't had time to let it sink in. I actually think they wind up winning maybe by 4.
You know, it's funny, I detected some tension among this team this week. Like, I kind of felt like they were on edge, just the way the guys were in the locker room. Everybody was hurried and rushed through all their preparation, and I think that's kind of a good thing. I'm starting to see an edge from this team, like an us against the world mentality, and really like, okay, we're angry we have to play so fast. We're angry we have to go on the road. We're angry about the losing streak. And earlier in the season, I know I talked with a lot of people about why aren't the Saints angry? And I looked up the definition of anger and frustration and broke that down and stuff and was kind of glad they weren't angry but more frustrated. But to see that anger right now and that edge they have, I think that's a great thing going on the road. And I think that they might start a little tense and a little tight, but I think as the game progresses, I think they might be able to pull away from Carolina.
Trust me, you know, Sean Payton and Drew Brees are joined at the hip, Eric. You know this from 2006, their first time here. And if you get in that sense and feeling, there's one thing I've known since covering 2006. It's on purpose. There's nothing that man does, there's nothing that man says that isn't thought about, rethought about, and it's done for a reason. So for Drew to come out that way after the game, Drew this week on Monday, you know, when he spoke to us on Tuesday, all of that, trust me, they've talked. It's, hey, it's all business, it's push at it, and it is that whole us against the world thing. Maybe they found that it works, and Trust me, when both of those guys sound the same and they're coming across the same, it's they've talked about it.
Well, guys, I'm going to go with my heart and not my gut. Okay? I mean, look, they have not proven they can win on the road.
Right.
This is a tough game against a division foe on a short week. Got a lot to talk about that immaturity factor. A lot of guys have not been involved in this, coming off a short week, and guys that are going to have to contribute on tonight. But I'll say this. I think the Saints win. I think because their backs are against the wall and they realize that, you know what, this could be the start of something really big with again, the home games coming up, and maybe they turn the corner. So I'll pick the Saints as well. Before we head to break, I want to mention something to the audience, and I'd like you guys to get involved in it. Gus Kattengell and the guys at 106.1 have started kind of a Twitter petition, and it's really kind of caught fire, and it's gone viral. Hashtag Save Smitty. If you would, Gus, tell us a little bit about it.
Save Smitty. How can you not want to save a guy that's given us great things such as let's go forward in overtime inside our own 30-something yard line? Guys that, it's situations where there's a reason we call him the master of panic. We saw that on Sunday, blowing a 21-0 lead. His cheeks turn red and his nose because of the blood pressure, but he's almost like Santa Claus. And if they fire him, which were the reports on Sunday night, it would have been awful because, and I'm being sarcastic, people, Saints fans always believe and feel as long as Mike Smith's on the sideline, Sean Payton will always outcoach him and you have a chance to beat them. And that's what makes this rivalry fun. So I just figured, let's use social media and we'll do hashtag Save Smitty.
Brilliant.
And
it has gone viral.
Sports Illustrated.
Yes.
Wait, here's the best part. On Wednesday night, it was trending in Naples, Italy. Naples, Italy. And it's funny. It's a picture of him slamming the headset, and he's blood red. And it's in Italian, and it's something like Save Smitty. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So it's funny. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution picked up. We just wanted to make sure that Mike knew that we cared.
And you know what? We hope that he is safe.
I hope he's fine.
There's no doubt about it. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports each and every Thursday night with our live broadcast 6 p.m. on Friday nights 10 p.m. here on WLAE with our recorded broadcast. Our rebroadcast is also on Pelican Sports Television in New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Lafayette, now at a new time, 9 p.m. on Friday. Gus Kattengell of 106.1 The Ticket and Lyons Yellin of WWLTV.com are our panelists tonight. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll talk Pelicans, LSU, and Tulane up next here on Inside New Orleans Sports.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
Located on Lake Pontchartrain, Brisbee's Lakefront Restaurant and Bar offers traditional West End favorites, a scenic view, oysters, and numerous tasty options. More information is available at 504-304-4125 or brisbeesrestaurant.com. At Natal's Air Conditioning, our motto is service honoring the golden rule. We're dedicated to providing the best air conditioning solution for your home or business in the New Orleans metro area. More information is available at 504-821-0005. Natal's Air Conditioning, a proud sponsor of the St. Jude Dream Home. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters, as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile. You're watching WLAE, New Orleans Public Television. Find us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.
Back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Gus Kattengell of 106.1 The Ticket and Lyons Yellin of WWLTV.com are our guests tonight. Guys, Pelicans get a nice win against really kind of an inferior opponent at home in Orlando. But this team, and look, I've been hesitant since the Saints and the all, championship on paper thing. This team on paper looks like they got a shot to be able to make the playoffs. It was a pleasant surprise to see how these guys played on Tuesday night against Orlando. The biggest addition right now is Omar Sheik and what he's been able to bring to the table. Double-double on Tuesday night. Obviously a great rebounder. A liability when it comes to the free throw line. But again, in a team that has so many shooters on it, he's a guy that doesn't need the basketball to be effective.
Right.
I'm excited about his addition and his ability to be able to protect Anthony Davis. Your thoughts about the addition of the big 7-footer?
I mean, he's huge. This team's been trying to go get, a Sheik forever. And they've tried. They've really, really tried. And they kind of mortgaged a little bit of the future to go get him. Bottom line is this, and I think he really makes Anthony Davis an MVP candidate. Main reason is some of that dirty work that he had to do. It's not that he wouldn't, but some of that physicality over a long season. It's October, guys.
Takes its toll.
And if you want to go for a championship, we're talking June. Playoffs are in May. End of April. AD doesn't know how to play any other way other than hard. But if you get a guy that's over 7 feet tall like that, and he's not a skinny 7 feet, he looks like a tree trunk, redwood in there. But you gotta love the fact that day one of training camp, he says, my job and the reason I'm here is to play defense and rebound and let Anthony Davis play his game.
Yes.
That's exactly what you want to hear from a guy in there. And you saw it immediately in the first quarter lines against, the Magic. They couldn't hit free throws. Pelicans were struggling they were missing layups. Yet, defensively and rebounds, a Sheik kept them in the game. Put-ins, of course, finishes with double. I mean, he had a double-double in the first half.
It was the missing link from last season.
Absolutely, no question about it. And it goes to what we were talking about even before we started the show. That component right there, not being there last year, Pels might lose that game last night. Likely will because of it. But the number one thing is he allows Anthony Davis to just play so much more freely, he's never going to have to play the 5 now.
Right.
And you do have that. And I'm telling you, it's going to add to it. 17 blocks, guys, by this team yesterday.
Oh, yeah. No, they were outstanding. And also, again, you mentioned not playing the 5. The only time he'll play the 5 will be obviously at crunch time.
Right.
When they get Ryan Anderson on the floor and he's playing the 4. Your thoughts, Lyon, on a Sheik and what he brings to the table?
He like you're saying, he really allows Anthony Davis to not be focused so much on being that main guy in the middle, and allows him to kind of step away from the basket at times a little bit too. I mean, you saw last night where he was able to get a few steals, jump out, steal the ball at the top of the key, go the length of the court.
Work Lyons on corner threes. Anthony Davis.
He really does have a complete game, and it's so exciting to watch this guy and how he's developed in such a short amount of time. And you even watched Davis over the summer, the way he played in USA basketball. Right. I mean, you saw this coming, and I think having Omar there just really allows him to kind of round out his game and be able to demonstrate that all over the court, not just inside.
Well, you saw it on Tuesday night. Davis didn't have to be everywhere. Okay.
Right.
Now he can concentrate on other parts of his game because he doesn't have to go down, rebound, block shots, kick the ball out. He doesn't have to do everything now. He's got somebody you can rely on, and you don't have to be there to protect the rim as well. Now you got a rim protector.
Yes.
And the big thing with Monty Williams obviously is defense, and this is a defensive-minded center.
One quick thing.
Sure.
He's a shot alternator.
Oh no,
we saw it one of the I want to say it was the first preseason game, right? The Miami Heat. Dwayne Wade comes in. Of course, we'll get to the perimeter defense in a second, but he's in the lane. I mean, this is 2. Any other night's 2. And he's on the left block. He's going up. Here comes a Sheik. Guess what Dwayne Wade, one of the best scorers, right, does? Dribbles it back, has to go back, hits a jumper, misses it off the back iron because he has to shoot it over him. That's a huge, huge component. Other players are alternating their shots because they know he's there. That's huge.
And he will keep Davis out of foul trouble, too.
Absolutely. That's another one.
Which is so
That was
important.
huge last year.
Yeah. I mean, he won't have to take those fouls, late in games. And
right.
That's a big benefit.
Well, especially in a guard-oriented lineup like they have. You need size in the middle. And again, even though Anthony Davis has made a miraculous change in terms of his body. I mean, you've seen he's put the effort in the offseason. From where he was when he left the University of Kentucky to where he is now, from a physical standpoint, it's night and day. But, you can have a smallish lineup at times, and this is a guy that can protect the rim for you. That's where I want to go next with this, because, again, they are guard heavy. How do they find the ability to be able to satisfy Gordon? Holiday, and Evans, be able to make sure that Anthony Davis is getting his touches. And then, of course, when Ryan Anderson comes in the game, his ability to be able to shoot from the outside. It's going to be an interesting dichotomy on how Williams is going to manage this going forward. Your thoughts, Gus?
I think it's his greatest challenge this season, to be honest with you. I think, here we go again, on paper, this is a potential playoff type team. And I say that because simply you got to be realistic. In the Western Conference, guys, 49 wins last year was the 8th seed. Vegas has the Pelicans for whatever Vegas is, right? Vegas, but it's 43. And that would be a dramatic improvement. There was 34 wins last year that this team had. So you're almost looking at a 10-game improvement. You would need almost a 15-game improvement. Do I think it can happen? Absolutely. You have the talent. You can score. It's what we're about to get into. But that's the challenge. And that's why his job's on the line. You have been given a gift, and you have been very, very lucky, okay? This franchise in New Orleans, since they moved here, you had Baron Davis and those guys, okay, they were a playoff team. And then you drafted Chris Paul. You got lucky. He left, and the basketball gods gave you another franchise player that you can build.
It rarely happens.
No, and
Unless you're in
it's
Cleveland.
San Antonio, right?
I mean,
go ahead.
And to define a big guy like that, I mean, there aren't a couple guys. I mean, there maybe one handful worth of guys in the league that have that size, strength, and ability to play all over the court. I mean, it's so rare, and this franchise is so lucky to have him. Hopefully, they'll be able to keep him. But
that's what we're talking about. That challenge on how to make those guards happy with the basketball.
You got to win, first of all, for him to want to stay. I mean, you got to give him a reason to want to stay. I think it's key, obviously, for Monty Williams with his relationship. Hey, Monty, you got to grow as a coach. Obviously, Davis would like to have him as a coach. They have a great relationship, but they've got to grow as a team here. And I think these first 20 games are going to be kind of a barometer on what type of team we're going to see going forward. It's pretty easy to throw all this out on paper, but this isn't fantasy basketball. At the end of the day, these guys got to coexist on the court, and each guys have a skill set. Some of those skill sets are duplicate skill sets by some of these players, and somehow Williams has got to figure out a way to be able to get these guys on the court and make sure they're happy. Because a lot of these guys are used to being the guy, having the ball in their hand and being able to score. And that's the thing I'll be watching over the first 25 games.
December 8th is the New York Knicks game, and it's here. And that's the 20th game. And I've been saying for the last couple of weeks on the show, I'm like, I think you need to be 14-6, 15-5. I'm really happy.
It's a pretty tough first month.
It is, but there's also a lot of winnable games. But Lions, 10 and under, there's a lot of trouble. The reason I say that is because 3 of the first 4, almost like the Saints in reverse, they're at home. Okay, you're on the road at Dallas on Saturday, but then you host a couple. And then that first test is that next weekend. LSU, Alabama's going on and all that. But you're San Antonio and at Cleveland. Okay, Saturday and Monday. So that'll be a nice, interesting barometer and test there. You have 2 road trips to the West Coast that include Golden State, the Clippers, and LA, the Lakers. But it'll be an interesting barometer. But I think some of those are winnable because of matchups. This team played well against Portland and stuff like that last year. So, Eric, in those 20 games, I'm going to learn a lot. 10 games and under, you might be the next coach of the New Orleans Pelicans.
If they can rebound like they did last night and play defense, protect the rim like that, they have a shot against anybody. And getting Cleveland early in the season, that's a good thing. I mean, I think that team is going to take some time to kind of adjust to all their new players.
At Cleveland,
but James, I mean, that team might struggle like you saw Miami when James first came there with Bosh and Wade. They kind of stumbled out of the gate a little bit, so I wouldn't be surprised to see them sneak in there and maybe win a game.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It'll be interesting. I mean, they got some games they can win there.
Pels a playoff team this year?
I think they are. It really depends, and I really honestly mean this. I'm as excited as I've ever been about the NBA, and I know there's a lot of people back then, back in the day, that the Iverson thing and guys like Artest going to stay. This is not that NBA. That's 10, 15 years ago, people. For the decision and all those different things, you would say Lions, the top 5, 6 players in the NBA, they don't get in trouble. None of them are getting arrested. There's no TMZ with them with weed you're not seeing it. If anything, they're toting their kids around and everything. So the NBA is enjoying a really good time right now. There's a lot of teams that have a lot of young stars, some superstars. The Pelicans are one of them. And I think LeBron going to Cleveland, dilutes the East in a good way in that it's open now. And so some of those wins that maybe came against them, maybe not. So it might help break up the West, but the West is so hard. You're looking at 49, 50 wins, I think for sure. But if you hit the 43, 45, you're at least in there. And I think if you're a Pelicans fan, I'd like to go into March with a shot.
Lyons, your take.
And you know, and I really see this city kind of embracing Anthony Davis. I tweeted out last night after the game that I thought he was one of the top 3 players in the league, and that would be the case by the end of the season if it's not already now. And I mean, it just blew up. People were retweeting and favoriting, and I think you'll see if they have some early success and Davis continues to play the way he did last night, you'll see New Orleans absolutely embrace him, like we talked about before the show, on a level like Drew Brees, and he will start to be that next superstar, which I think he already is in this city, and I think that could really help the Pelicans get on a run.
I think they're a playoff team, but again, I think it comes down to the thing that really hurt them last year, the ability to stay healthy. They've got to stay healthy.
Yeah.
You know, they're a little bit, as I've mentioned earlier, a little bit oversaturated at the guard position. But, you know, after you get to that, you know, you got to, you know, there's a big drop off. So we'll see what happens going forward. But I do think that if they stay healthy, with the lineup they have right now, they can be a playoff
Question
team.
for you. You like the red unis?
You know, I do.
I love the red unis. I want that to be the home uni all the time.
I do. I prefer having New Orleans on the chest, but I do like the red uniforms.
Yeah,
I definitely do. The Tigers. Let's shift gears to the Tigers. Obviously, an off week this week, coming off a huge win against Ole Miss in Tiger Stadium. Tigers are now 7-2, 19th in the first college football poll. It'll be interesting to see what happens. You know, because I'm of the opinion that if it wasn't fool's gold that we saw last week, that this team may have turned a corner. You know, I've said all season long, this team will go as far as the offensive defensive lines take them. Well, the offensive line has been dominating. The ability to have 4 backs that can just wear you out. You know, by the time Hilliard got in the game against Ole Miss wanted no part of tackle on anyone. Okay, I mean, it was that's how bad it got for Ole Miss. But it'll be interesting to see how they go forward. You know, looking at this a few weeks ago, you'd say there's no way the last 3 games of the season this team is going to be even in the same area code with Alabama, Arkansas, and Texas A&M. But now looking at this after the Kentucky win and then followed by the Ole Miss win, you got to say that this team has maybe turned a little bit of the corner here and could quite frankly, especially having Alabama at home, could be in these games. Lyons, I'll take you first. Talk first of all about this LSU team and you know, have they matured under fire here? Are they ready to make a little bit of a move?
I think so. I mean, I was so impressed watching them play against Ole Miss the other night. I mean, it looked like a mature defense, and I think last week that was probably the best defense in the country right there. It looked like to me. They were physical. They stayed at home. They didn't let their eyes fool them with a lot of the misdirection that Ole Miss ran, and the defensive line and the linebackers, secondary. I mean, it was just an all-around great effort, and I think with a young team like that, and when you see with guys like Beckwith and cornerback. White. These guys are getting so much experience at such a young age that it really bodes well going forward. You
know, guys, the biggest change that I saw was, and obviously these guys had to learn because they were young. We talked about the Saints and the immaturity. Right. You look at Gottschall up the middle. You look at Beckwith finally taking over that middle linebacker position, and then you look at Jamal Adams. You know, in order to win, especially in the SEC West, you got to be strong up the middle. All of a sudden, 3 freshmen or 3 young players are in a position now where you're looking and you're going, you know what? These guys are playing pretty good football right now.
I think, Eric, we're going to look back at this season, and I said it the Monday after the game, and I really think so. I'm going to give you my reasons why, and it goes down to maturity and youthfulness on these teams. The Florida game, I think, was the turning point for this football team. You had gotten spanked for 2 SEC teams. I mean, you did. 570 to Mississippi State defensively, 566. Tiger fans, talk shows, journalists. Oh, it's Jennings and Harris. It had nothing to do with the quarterbacks. You couldn't stop anybody. Right. You got handled, and that was the alarming thing if you're an LSU fan. It was to me. Since Miles has been there, physically, they had gone to battle on a field and were either the superior or matched, right? Alabama. And here comes 2 teams, and they look physical. It was men against boys. So you sit back and go, what the heck happened? Oh, okay, I see it. Mississippi State and Auburn, they're juniors and seniors. I mean, Dak Prescott is a junior.
And they played a lot, those guys.
Yeah, he's been playing since a freshman.
Yes.
Because remember, the big story going into that game was LSU didn't want him. Well, LSU had Zach Mettenberger.
Right.
Let's not forget.
And they did go after him late.
Exactly.
Right.
So Mississippi
That's their
State.
MO. They go after
And
players.
Mississippi State said, all right, well, you can start now and be our guy. So that's a senior late team. Alabama, they had struggles a little bit this year. There's a first-year starting quarterback for them as well, just like LSU. So you're going to struggle with that. But at Florida, it was the first time that you saw, sort of like the Saints, that maybe guys are seeing it. Instead of waiting and watching Drew Brees and other guys make plays, the freshmen and sophomores at LSU were the ones that made plays at Florida. It was the redshirt sophomore quarterback made the throw. It was Durrell with the catch. He's a freshman there. Fournette, freshman there. The 2 interceptions were by sophomores. So for the first time, the freshmen and sophomores won the game. So now you go into the locker room and you're going, hey, okay, it's us. We can do it. And from that point on, the confidence, the body language on this team. Kentucky's not a bad team. They gave Mississippi State all they wanted. They were 5-1, and they blew them out of the water. And you don't play the game you did against Ole Miss if you don't have confidence. So I think that's something that's interesting to me to see. That youth starting to grow up, but more importantly, that youth making the plays. Wait for 2 years when these guys are juniors.
You know, I think this has been one of Les Miles' best coaching jobs. I thought the game plan going into that Ole Miss game was phenomenal. I thought he was patient. He stuck with the run.
Yes.
He knew he had to protect his quarterback.
Game, right, Lyons?
Absolutely.
I mean,
it's his kind of game.
on.
He threw a couple times on first down, which was good, kept him off bounds, but then stuck with it in the end. Hilliard, you put him in late in the game, and he just bulls over
and he
their
stuck
entire
with Jennings
defense.
too after that interception. I thought that was key too.
And not just that, got Jennings on the edge. You know, again, I think one of the worst things you can do with a young quarterback, especially guys that have played maybe a little bit of a offense in high school where they're a little bit more of a running quarterback on the edge, is try to make him a pocket passer. These guys are not Zach Mettenberger.
Yeah.
And once you put him on the edge, the ability to grow 1-2 reads and then run.
Absolutely.
You know, you may cut half the field off, but at the end of the day, 2 reads and then let him get the extra
You only
yards.
ask him to throw 10 to 15
That's all.
times, not 40.
And the way this offensive line is playing now, they are physically imposing their will on the opposing team. And again, if you can do that, you're going to open up things, much like we saw with the Saints, ability to run the ball, safety's got to come up, all of a sudden you go over the top. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens against Alabama, where, again, a few weeks ago, you would think Alabama was going to run them out of Tiger Stadium. As we sit here today, I'm going to tell you right now, I think the Tigers have a real shot of beating Alabama in Tiger Stadium because of the way they're running the football and the emergence, again, Rasco and Hunter on the defensive line finally living up to their press clippings as well.
Yeah, no question. I'll say this. The bye week always kind of helps. You
right.
can rest up a little bit, kind of get ready and get re-energized. And you know what? If I said at the beginning of the season it was going to be one of the most exciting LSU seasons only because you didn't have that whole, hey, they should win. And then you had LSU fan upset because it wasn't a 30-point win. It was a 22-point win. You didn't know going into some of these games. You don't know. And to me, that's what's always been exciting about being an LSU fan, that you don't know. And that's why there was magic Saturday night in Tiger Stadium. You were the underdog. Could you win? Could you do it? Les Miles says, let's all be a part of it and let's try to do it. And I think you're going to have the same thing against Bama.
You know, usually the bye week, I think, is good for both teams. Yes. But I think with LSU being as young as they are this year, I think it actually hurts them going into this game. I think if they would have been able to just ride that wave, that high after the win over Ole Miss right into the Alabama game and not really have time to think about, you know, okay, what do we have to do against Alabama? And are they as good as they've looked on film over the recent weeks? And they do have some more experienced players than LSU. I think that might actually hurt LSU here. I think it would have been better for them to go just straight into it, and I think that would have made it.
But let me take a little opposing view here. Now you got 2 weeks to prepare for Alabama. All you're doing is you're looking at Alabama film. You're looking at Alabama's weaknesses. Now you got an opportunity to have practices for guys that maybe, you know, these guys are getting, freshmen, guys that are playing, they're getting more practices under their belt. Yeah. So I'm with you. The emotion-wise, yes, I would like to see them go right into it.
When young guys think too much, though, yes. I think they slow down, and I think they get in trouble. I think they need to play with just that raw emotion and not be too caught up in the game plan. Obviously, it's important to know it inside inside and out, but you want them to play as fast as possible, and they do that when they don't overthink it.
102,000 might motivate them, though. That's for sure.
I was going to say, and
Yeah.
you mentioned too how drastic just in a month you look at it. I mean, there were reports this week that Texas A&M has opened up the quarterback battle.
Yeah.
That Kenny Trill's no longer the thrill.
And he was
all
the
that.
Heisman candidate
right,
after
yeah,
the first
so
game.
that's interesting because you're right. I thought, that's going to be bad.
Oh, I thought, well,
no,
look,
it's
the
going to
back
be
of the
bad.
schedule, it says brutal. I said they might not win a game.
Yeah.
But now you're looking at it, hey, Arkansas is not as good as maybe they looked early.
It was fun to hear on the radio this week, all the LSU call-ins on your show and different shows talk about the scenarios of LSU actually winning the West now. And you know what? Stranger things have happened.
Yeah.
It happened before.
They're still got
Lions,
a lot
I tweeted
of
out
teams,
last night,
yeah.
guys, they're at 19. How far can they go if they win the last 3 games? I mean, I don't expect them to get into the Final Four, but you never know what's going to happen with a bunch of 2-loss SEC West
Well, look,
teams.
Mississippi State still has to play Alabama, right?
Right.
Alabama still has to
And
play
Ole Miss.
Auburn.
Ole Miss and
still-
Auburn this
yeah,
week.
I mean, you don't know. It's really sad. I mean, when you think about it, kind of goes to show you the strength of the SEC West. That's insane. I mean, when you think of how tough those teams are.
Guys, I want to move to Tulane quickly,
Sure.
but Alabama, LSU, what do you like?
Why not?
Yeah.
Give me the Tigers.
Can I jump on that bandwagon?
Sure,
I'll
why
jump on
not?
this
I
week.
mean,
I'll
Lions?
give an opposing view.
Okay.
I'm gonna go with Alabama coming in. It's going to be close.
And why?
I just think that they're a little bit more physical up front and have a little bit more experience in the linebackers in the front seven. I think they'll be able to control the LSU run game better than Ole Miss could.
Gus, you're the sideline reporter for the Tulane Green Wave. You've seen this team up close and personal. The biggest change that I've seen is the defense is finally coming together.
Yeah, no question about it. And I think, Eric, it's from the defensive line. I mean, you lost so many starters last year, and that transfer from LSU and Chris Davenport brought some size and stuff, but you lose that, that's going to be hard. Plus, you got a trio of sophomore linebackers, very similar to LSU guys. Don't be surprised here in 2-3 years where Tulane's going to be physically. Nico Marley, the guy's insane. I mean, he's had double-digit tackle games all the time. But Edward Williams, another local product here that is starting to play well. It's starting to click for him. Flying all over the field, he's very physical. Eric Thomas, all 3 linebackers are sophomores. They're making plays. Lorenzo Dawson, the back end, had a lot of preseason accolades towards him with the interceptions. He has, 13 or 14 in his career, one of the top in the country. Darren Monroe is pretty good as well. So that defense is starting to come together, and it's really been the reason that they've been in games, could have beaten UCF.
Right.
A team that went to the Fiesta Bowl last year. So
They
it's getting
definitely
there.
hung with them. There's no look. I was pleasantly surprised. I thought that UCF speed would overtake them.
Didn't happen.
Tulane speed was as good, if
Eric,
not
physically, they've matched teams in the American
They
Conference.
have.
That was my biggest question. How are they going to match? 'Cause
Yeah.
I've watched some Conference USA games. It's
right. Lions just been self-inflicted
yeah.
wounds more than anything else that really hurt Tulane.
And they're a better team than they were last year, I think, but they're just in a tougher conference.
I
So
agree.
So that definitely makes it more difficult. But you really got to like all the athletes you mentioned that CJ has brought into that. I mean, they have some guys that are on the verge of being pro prospects.
And that's defense. We're not even talking about
Right,
offense.
right.
Look, Tanner Lee is going to get it. Give him time. Sherman Beatty, guys, may be the next NFL running back
Right.
out of Tulane. I'm telling you, he has all the tools.
Yes.
4.3 speed, freshman. Tanner, freshman. Teddy Veal, receiver, freshman. Again, like LSU, all these snaps, all these bumps they're getting now, by the time they're juniors, and those linebackers will be seniors.
Yep. Tanner Lee gets the start against Cincinnati on Halloween. He's got to take care of the football.
Got to.
I mean,
Got to
that's-
do that. Got
that's
to
the
get
key.
back into it. But
He's
you
got
know what?
everything else.
Again, like the Saints, run the football. This team can run the football.
You like Cincinnati or Tulane on Friday night?
I think Tulane can do this.
I do too. I think Tulane's been close. I think they've kind of gone over the hump a little bit.
It's Gulaween. What is it? A little
Yeah.
promo this
Gulman
week.
Stadium, that's
Gulman
right.
Stadium. Yeah. So it should be
love
pretty
it.
spooky, and
Yeah.
I think Tulane probably pulls it out.
Lyons Yellin of WWLTV.com, Gus Kattengell of 106.1 The Ticket. Thanks for being part of the panel here on Inside New Orleans Sports.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you.
And thanks so much for watching Inside New Orleans Sports. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this program here on WLAE on Friday nights at 10 p.m. Also on Pelican Sports Television in New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Lafayette at 9 p.m. on Friday night. You can always catch me on the radio weekdays, 11 a.m. until 1 p.m. on WGSO 990 a.m. And also, again, you can listen live, download my podcast at ericasher.com. And if you missed any of the previous episodes of Inside New Orleans Sports, you can check those out at ericasher.com as well. Again, special thanks to our guests, Gus Kattengell and Lyons Yellin. I'm Eric Asher. Also want to thank our production staff here at WLAE, including Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Donovan Joseph, my director, William Hill, and Nyla Jones handling the sound as well. That's it for us tonight. We'll see you right back here next week, Thursday night, 6 p.m. for Inside New Orleans Sports. Have a great evening, New Orleans. And let's get some wins this weekend. Oh, wait a minute. We're off this weekend. Have a great evening.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by
Located on Lake Pontchartrain, Brisbee's Lakefront Restaurant and Bar offers traditional West End favorites, a scenic view, oysters, and numerous tasty options. More information is available at 504-304-4125 or brisbeesrestaurant.com. At Natal's Air Conditioning, our motto is service honoring the golden rule. We're dedicated to providing the best air conditioning solution for your home or business in the New Orleans metro area. More information is available at 504-821-0005. Natal's Air Conditioning, a proud sponsor of the St. Jude Dream Home. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters, as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile.